Before I go into looking at this particular slide in terms of the relevance in relationship to TUT, I wanted to reflect on work that I did at Howard University with regards to socially relevant computing. There, I was responsible for coordinating the postgraduate program in computer science, systems and computer science. And when we instituted a doctoral program, I insisted that we design a special course for all doctoral students called Socially Relevant Computing. And there it was basically a workshop-oriented, uh, discussion-based course where all the students had to look at various historical cases of socially relevant computing and to discuss what their plans were in terms of their research and how they saw relevance in it. And it was a required course of all of our students because we wanted them to, in addition to just talking about what their research problem was, to be able to relate their research problem to some level or some type of social relevance. So it was a rewarding experience creating that course and actually then taking that information and building it into a funded workshop that we actually held in 2010 in Accra, Ghana, and then 2011 here in Pretoria in terms of engaging internationally many researchers and academics that were interested in socially relevant computing. I wanted to just show these two institutional goals of TUT to relate how our university has, uh, within its goals, linked to the whole issue of social relevance. So just to state those two goals, to promote a culture of inquiry and social enterprise through technology-based postgraduate studies, research and innovation in current and emerging niche areas. So this inquiry and social enterprise is key. And then to promote, let's get my slide uh, backwards. And then the second one, to promote a mutually beneficial academic, social, and economic partnerships. So these partnerships that key in not only with the academic, but the social and economics is key. So one of the things that we embarked on about 5 years ago in response to a call by the NRF here in South Africa was to look at a flagship project for the university. The NRF had mandated universities to harness their resources across the university and sort of identify how they would relate in terms of their research agenda on a broad scale. So this was designed to harness our research activities across the university. And we decided it's approximately 5 years ago when we first initiated this effort to develop a proposal that we wanted to focus it in on technology transfer. And this was important in terms of our relationship, seeing ourselves as the people's university. We wanted our agenda, our research agenda, to be directly related to the community. So it's anticipated that the improved participation of marginalized groups within our surrounding diverse communities will lead to innovation and community empowerment. And I'm sure Professor Mucci will talk more about the whole role of the innovation and its relationship to community empowerment. So when we look at technology transfer, there are basically two types of technology transfer. There's what's called a vertical transfer technology, where we have a basic research that's advanced within the university to applied research, and then actually to a level of development and production. And then secondly, we look at horizontal technology transfer, and this is where you have the technology that's transferred from one location to another. This may be transferring from a more technologically advanced country to one that's less technologically advanced. It may be a matter of transferring technology from an urban setting that's more advanced to a rural setting or to a neighboring country. It may be even a case of using more indigenous knowledge and technology to transfer to another location. So it's not just a matter of thinking in terms of we have just the more economically powerful countries that will be transferring technology to the less disadvantaged or underdeveloped. It's a matter of understanding and appreciating indigenous knowledge that we hold in terms of being able to play a role in technology transfer. So this research initiative is to address all perspectives of this type of transfer. Now, the tech transfer breaks down in terms of we looked at it from an academic perspective of three levels. The actual outreach, where we want to work with communities to actually provide training, education, investigate how to create jobs. And that's where we looked at the second one, job and enterprise creation research. So this was actually researching in terms of the whole area of how are jobs created, so that it's not just a matter of sort of blankly going out saying we're going to create jobs. This is a whole arena that needs to be investigated in terms of the relationships that exist between universities and communities and within the communities that will actually spur on the whole arena of job creation. Third, we were looking at the dissemination of our research, and this is to share with academics across Africa and internationally. We realized the strengths at TUT and the necessities of the community, and we said that while we can't initially take on all of the research going on at TUT, we would look at these three areas: water and sanitation, energy, and industry. And within the context of energy industry, we're looking at both manufacturing, which is a strong point here because we have the Cabela TUT partnership, and the service industries, which are important because this ranges everything from service such as postal service that's in need of assistance to the delivery of energy and water. So you see a relationship between the service and what we're already talking about in terms of water and sanitation and energy. So this gives you an idea of the organization of the flagship. We had the arenas dealing with technology transfer itself, and then we had the three areas that we were addressing initially in terms of energy research, industry, and water research. And in each of those areas, we had particular lead researchers that were responsible for how to assist in it. We had identified certain cross-cutting research. And this was a way to engage other areas, even though we realized that the focus in terms of delivering to the community would be around industry, energy, and water and sanitation. And one was engineering design, and this is one of the areas that Professor Mucci was particularly engaged in. And this is to help in terms of taking concepts from the mental models through the prototype and design stage to production. So this whole area of engineering design becomes key not only when we're looking at manufacturing, but when we're looking at how to deliver from the basic research level of water and sanitation in our energy areas. Appropriate technology is what this conference is about. This is technology to empower people and communities. And when we're talking about technology transfer in terms of transferring technology to our communities, it's about how do we focus on transferring this appropriate technology to empower communities. So this became a key cross-cutting area across all three of those agendas that we had identified: water and sanitation, industry, and energy. Thirdly, a cross-cutting area was ICT, in that we needed this ability to deal with information and computing technologies to actually not only share the knowledge and transfer technology, but also to be able to facilitate, even within the research groups, their ability to identify best practices and to correlate their data in terms of the actual work. So we saw the ICT as a cross-cutting key area. Fourthly, the innovation economics in terms of actually looking at the development of more effective approaches in terms of how we would go about engaging the communities in terms of technology transfer. So this is key because it became a complex and is always a complex situation in terms of how to embrace the community. The communities quite often are skeptical about researchers, and and quite often as researchers we're unaware of the complications when we come to and engage a community. This is a particular diagram of the responsibilities as we initiated them in our flagship so that we had people responsible for each of these areas. We see entrepreneurship and engineering design, which is led by Professor Mamumuchi. And our water was our Sarsi chair, Professor Mamba, and industry is our Sarsi chair, Professor Mpofu, and Professor Munda, who is our acting dean of engineering and the built environment and has initiated a center dealing with energy, who was responsible for that area. So we had various flagship components, and I won't go into these in detail, but the idea was to engage industry and government when we looked at how we're going to reach the community, but also how we're going to address the various areas, whether it be water and sanitation, or particularly as we address our escalation within industry. The Fab Lab is set up to have a global collaboration in terms of how to actually fabricate from the design level into prototypes and actually look at how to then even engage beyond prototypes in terms of manufacturing and startups. Key to this whole area is mentorship because the idea is that we want to replicate what many of the lead researchers are capable of doing, the Sarsi chairs and the advanced researchers, so that it would be not only advance the university, but this would advance the whole agenda in terms of our technology transfer. I want to switch now to talk more about uh, the concerns that we share in terms of why we haven't had more done in terms of socially relevant research. And this is because of the current research trends. The current research trends are dominantly shaped by those countries that are most powerful economically and politically. These are the ones that have the most funds in terms of going into research. These are the ones that sort of set the direction in terms of research agenda. But it has a ripple effect even to those of us in the global south, such as South Africa. There's this general publish or perish mentality that has taken hold in all universities that sort of your merit your worth is measured upon how many articles you publish or conferences you uh, present to. And it's a question of how does this really impact our ethics and research if we're sort of just running after publications and not really looking at the issue of the social relevance or the ethical importance and significance of the work we're doing. And this has always been a particular concern of INAT. So major research grants have basically determined the direction of research and therefore the direction of publication. So people then sort of get into this whole uh, going sort of downstream in terms of this whole approach. And it's unfortunately that most of the monies on an international level are put into military space related research. And this does significantly impact the research agenda globally. We found this particularly to be the case in the US, where there are so many agencies that are linked to the military that are basically offering up funding for universities and university professors to conduct research, which means those funds are then used to hire research assistants and postdocs and then feed back into producing military related research, and this has a ripple effect, unfortunately. So this is just a slide to give you an example of that. This is showing the non-defense research in the 2016 in the US and the defense-related research. And it's particularly significant that when it came to the money spent on development, that so much more was coming from the defense area. So this meant that those projects that actually went beyond just a basic need and applied and actually into the development stages, which is what we're talking about in terms of the type of work we want to do with related to technology transfer in the community, was actually in the case of the U.S. overwhelmingly dealt with within the arena of defense. So this is significant because it's not just, well, it's overwhelmingly the case in the U.S. It's also been heavily impacted in other countries such as the EU countries, uh, and so this is an ongoing problem that we see the world is faced with. So the issue becomes redirecting the research trends. And this is where we have to individually take a stance, but also collectively look at how to take a stance in terms of challenging the way that these current funding patterns are. And these challenges must come not only to the government, which is responsible for the defense industry uh, appropriation of funding, or space agencies misappropriation of funding. When I say misappropriation, I mean the excessive funds that they're awarded. But also we have to direct it to multinational corporations, which also play a role in terms of how they dictate certain kinds of agendas when it comes to research funding, and how they have the ability to provide more research funds to the universities. We thirdly need to address it within the context on the international level of agencies, because they are also play a role in terms of that. And what we want to do with this in terms of linking this redirecting of funds is to raise the issue of ethics-based decolonization. And this is because we understand that within the context of the global experience, there has been this massive colonization process. And while politically countries have gone beyond being colonized, there still is a legacy that has left us with this proportionate distribution of resources and the type of agendas that we see here, even in South Africa post-apartheid. So in terms of ethics-based decolonization, redirecting the research is one of the key things that INAT has been involved with. And part of our call for that is with regards to our appropriate technology declaration, which you can see posted on our website. And this is a sort of a declaration to say this is how we should be dealing with technology. And we're going beyond that. In this conference, you'll see that actually tomorrow we have a workshop that's looking not only at the declaration, but going beyond that to develop a international team that looks at the formulation of an appropriate technology manifesto that can call on the redirection of resources in terms of how a technology policy needs to be altered. And this has an immense impact on the broader concept and construct of decolonization. We're particularly focusing on this decolonization in terms of the restructuring of higher education. And this curriculum restructuring is more than just Africanization. Quite often people think of decolonization meaning, okay, we're now going to rectify the errors in terms of how European colonizers have defined history, or how they have looked at culture, or how they have abandoned intentionally our languages in Africa and other indigenous languages. But it goes beyond that in terms of us looking at restructuring higher education so that it is more ethical and is more concerned with the people. And this is where the socially relevant research agenda goes beyond just the research, but also impacts curriculum. So the impact of the STEM education has to start, and it's particularly important because we are constantly hearing about the role of the fourth industrial revolution. So we need to understand how this fourth industrial revolution is inevitable, but we need to shape it in a fashion where it's about empowering people and communities. So in terms of technology policy, the ethics must be linked to technology choices. As I indicated, we're calling for this appropriate technology manifesto. But we see it's so important that our academic organizations, whether they are staff organizations or student organizations, must challenge the governments to redirect funds and human resources so that the spending on technologies is more about advancing humanity. Okay, let me take a break. Did not see this. Okay, we're just doing a video check. So the ethical decision to oppose educational and research expenditures linked to military is important. And in some countries, some universities have actually taken a stance in terms of uh, rejecting this massive expenditures in terms of research, human and financial resources within the regards to the military. But it's up to any individual to take a stance with regards to how they want to engage in that. So this linking of social relevance to decolonization of higher education is what we're looking at. And we look at this even in terms of how we go about organizing the flagship initiative in terms of its focus, in terms of technology transfer and empowering communities. But also we want to look at this issue of decolonizing within the context of the curriculum. And that's where I want us to look at these last two slides I have. One is just broad decolonizing of our curriculum. We have seen certain areas that even have been identified through the advocates of fourth industrial revolution as a need for us to embrace within the curriculum that will allow for people to understand better what's going on in the world. And these are what I call thinking paradigms, that we need to, within the curriculum, focus more on critical and creative thinking. We need to have all students take courses like that. All students take courses on computational thinking. When we say computational thinking, we don't just mean that everyone needs to learn how to be a computer programmer, but we need to understand that the concept of computational thinking and how that applies beyond just the use of computer languages. Scientific thinking is something that has been discussed and broadly used, but very seldom do people actually take a course in scientific thinking. Just as systems thinking becomes much more important with globalization, we understand that the world is just one large system, and with globalization, the communication links have increased so that the systems themselves have become more complex, and it's important for us to embrace this concept of systems thinking. We see this whole arena of appropriate technologies being important in terms of the decolonization of curriculum, just as development studies. Understanding the whole process of the economic and social and political development that has gone on historically, and how to use developmental studies in terms of the agendas that are emerging in order to further develop the less developed areas in the world. It's an important endeavor that needs to be part of the enrichment of the curriculum in terms of decolonization. And then more broadly, just a course or module dealing with ethics and the decolonization process on a global perspective is important. This last slide looks at how, within the context of socially relevant computing and decolonizing the university as an aspect of broadly decolonizing, that we can look at the STEM curriculum. We saw energy as key within our technology transfer and our whole program with regards to the flagship agenda at TUT. Alternative energy studies is a whole arena. We understand what fossil fuels has done and continue to do as the major supplier of energy in the world today, what it's doing to the environment, what it's doing to the planet, both the ground and the air, and we realize that alternative energies must be more widely studied within the context of the STEM area as we look toward decolonizing the curriculum. Environmental science, climate change studies. This becomes, on one hand, scientists have made it clear what is happening to the planet, but then they're the denialists. This speaks to why there's a need to have more emphasis on these types of studies and make this integral part of the curriculum so as to offset those that want to hold the planet back. Water resources studies. There's been much discussion in the media about the problems that we've had in terms of our supplying waters to areas such as Hamascrawl, and we realize that water resource studies is a major concern that must be a part of our agenda in terms of decolonizing education. Additive manufacturing and local manufacturing studies will be an area that will empower our engineers, our technical people, our industry in general, in terms of being more broad community based, in terms of being able to assist not only startups and small and medium businesses, but uh, to be able to gather more through the whole supply chain in terms of that. Next, our appropriate architecture area is key in terms of how we need to expand our curriculum. The, the last area that I have listed here is the transport and railroad studies and research. Here, in particular at TUT, we have the Gibella TUT partnership, which is about the rails industry skills in the supply chain. But this is particularly important because in terms of this globalization and our being able to supply across borders more and to be able to also travel more, that we understand that the rail and transport industry becomes key in how to move this whole area to be more effective in terms of community empowerment. At the same time, keep into the context the needs of the planet in terms of environmentally sound become key. And linking this whole area of transport and railroad studies to manufacturing is key. And this is one of the contributions that the Gibella TUT rail project is making now. So these are just some of the ideas that will take us from the general, as we talked about it, in terms of uh, uh, socially relevant computing, to the very particular in terms of how we can adjust our curriculum. At this point, I'm going to stop my sharing, and I went a little bit longer than I had planned on this, but I want to turn it over to Prof. Mucci, and I can give him the ability to share his screen in a minute.
Yes, thank you so much for this very, very, very educative. So where's my PowerPoint?
Okay,
Okay.
you now
Yeah.
have the ability to share screen, so you can go to the bottom and do the share and pull up your PowerPoint.
Okay, thank you. Is it on now? I said
No.
share.
No, you did. You click share at the bottom, and then you had to identify which one you're sharing. No, it's
Okay,
not
right.
on yet.
It's not on yet. Okay, to share, and then yes, but he's still on, I think. No, is it okay now?
Yes, now we see your PowerPoint. You just need to then go to the, the actual running of the PowerPoint.
Okay, I can run
The
it.
presentation. Hit the presentation button at the bottom.
Oh, the presentation, but
No, under your PowerPoint. It's right down here.
here.
Next, over a little bit. There.
Okay.
Show slides. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Then it goes on. So okay, it goes on. I can see. All right. Thank you very much. I enjoyed your very good presentation, very thorough, and what I'm saying is going to follow up a bit. So I will try to make it shorter because you've taken a long time. So I'll try to make it 15 minutes. I hope. But the main thing I have is how do we develop socially relevant research by creating a socially inclusive innovation system. That is quite important because the innovation system approach requires to make system elements to be broadened and even activities and functions to be broadened, and also the actors also that are excluded need to be included, and the actors that also misbehave mostly by taking control, by making profit making and economic gain as more important than inclusive social and environmental gain. Those things have to be also included. Then I suggested what I call the community system of innovation. And I also suggest why in South Africa, what priorities should be done. I also have added something about the African Talent Hub that we try to create, and the entrepreneurship also within the university here in Swana University of Technology, where I have been thinking and trying to communicate with a number of people here, but still where the challenge is still on. So we'll do that. So yeah, the key thing is all innovation systems have elements, components, and parts. And all innovations have activities to perform functions with varying degrees of effectiveness. All innovation systems have linkages, interconnections, and interactions. All innovation systems have boundaries, spatial, sectoral, technological. The interesting question now is if we want to move from the technical innovation system, economically dominated one, to the inclusive, the unification of environment, social, and other dimensions that Professor Trimble identified, if we are going to include and make them appropriate technology, in other words, we need appropriate technology can only be appropriate when it becomes social technology. Social, when science also becomes, the social dimensions are included, both in terms of impact, output, and effective implementation. On those kinds of things, how do we also create, how do we change the boundary, the linkages, the interactions, the connections, and the activity sets, and also the system elements and components. And that is the kind of thing we need to create systems of innovation that the policy setting, the actors, the framing, the conceptual frame, the specific level where whether what we identify, the activity sets, the institutions, the knowledge, the incentives, the governance, the leadership, all right, and the systems all need to be identified. So the interesting question then becomes, how do we go about it? Are they included selected elements specifically related to innovation creation, absorption, transfer, and adaptation or not? Does the interaction facilitate certain outcomes and hinder others? Does the interaction lock the system of innovation to certain parts of development? In other words, if it locks in, it means it's not easy to include elements and actors and areas and activities that need to be included. How and who facilitates system openness? How can the system building prevent lockout, potential passive development that may come from outside the system? Very, very interesting. The pattern of development that we have seen in the world is a linear path of development. But now we may need a co-evolutionary, more integrated development, sustainable development. Those are the new things that are coming now. How do we bring about sustainable development, integrated development, inclusive development, and not just development and economic growth? Not judging by the number of people that make huge amount of resources and impact on the gross domestic product of a country, but how the people's well-being, the nature well-being is preserved as the economy also advances. What kind of social innovation do we create? Uninnovative innovation to re-innovate it in such a way that it actually includes what has been excluded and ignored, and so on. For example, the opportunity to harness broad-based innovation by lockout is very, very important. Boundaries range, especially from local to city, community, region, national, and global. Where to draw the boundary, who to include, who to exclude. Boundaries related to production, industry, firms, sectors, global firms. It's very, very important. Boundaries now, we have agriculture boundary, for manufacture, and services. Most of our people in Africa are in the agricultural sphere, in the rural areas. The interesting question now with this new technology we are having now, the digital technology, which is boundaryless, it goes everywhere. The interesting question now is what kind of new linkages can we also construct? And how do we also link the high-tech, the low-tech, and the intermediate technologies? And how do we also link the urban and the rural, the industrial and the agriculture, the high-tech and the medium-tech, low-tech technology, absorbing or technology generating, and so on. Boundaries can be narrow to exclude or broader to include. Boundaries are not necessarily fixed. They can be flexible and amenable to intelligent adjustment. Those are the kinds of things we need to do. We do need now what we call the community system of innovation, or what I call the social system of innovation. Today, the most popularized system of innovation is at the national level. This is how the Japan and the Scandinavian countries and others have done a lot of work on innovation system. The first one is called Frederick List, who did it in 1841 in Germany. And that Germany used to be divided to something like 250 principalities. And then when Bismarck and others came is when Germany became united. And the innovation system, the national system production, they called it, is what they did. Through that system of innovation, it's how the system of innovation came through them. And we in Africa are extremely divided. We don't trust each other. We don't work with each other. We don't love each other. I don't know what happens. So we love those who kill us and who hate us. And we don't love each other. And we need to build trust capital. Very, very important that we do. So, and this can only be done if we also develop a new social technology, a new social innovation, and a new system of innovation. And we also create a community system of innovation. The relevant institutions, although that create knowledge and R&D, and then they can also apply R&D. R&D is not easy to apply. Some companies may have innovation, but they may not have it costs to put R&D, so they may not be able to do it. So the main actors often selected are industry, university, government interaction. Again, the triple helix, the quadruple helix, even has to change to quadruple helix. Now, triple helix is university, government, and industry. But we need to also include the community. The community system of innovation is very important. So broad-based innovation need to widen the innovation system to the community level, establish a community innovation system to promote broad-based innovation, redefine community level elements. In other words, the whole innovation system elements have to be redefined. They broaden the boundary to include the community as part of the interaction of government, industry, university. So we create from the triple helix to what I call the quadruple helix. We redefine institutions, incentives, regulations, and policy to accommodate community level knowing for creating grassroots innovation. So, and what I call a community innovation system is an ability by a community to mobilize, use resources, organize knowledge and human capital training, deploy institutions, putting in place incentives and regulations to carry out the favorite experiments, activities, and functions undertaken by citizens by converting their tacit and explicit knowledge into innovations. It's the active engagement and support by government, industry, and universities and other actors in and with the community's efforts to create and transform existing knowledge into innovation by identifying and applying the knowledge converted into innovations to address social and environmental challenges at the grassroots level. Governments at the bottom of the pyramid. Governments support through constructive policy, universities by providing top research to identify the knowledge, the top social research to identify the knowledge that exists at the community level, know it, learn it, the indigenous knowledge, and industry by helping in the process of conversion the community knowledge into innovation. And the community is empowered to use the knowledge inside to create innovation and wealth. All the transition countries have features of system of innovation actor interactions characterized by bifurcated developing and developed country characteristics. South Africa is one of these. The challenge is to shape the developing country feature to make it a developed one, a completely united developed one. To date, no African country, even South Africa, has become or attained the level of a developed country status. Meanwhile, as the policy pundits keep peddling competitiveness and other aspirations to reach industrial status, many people in the rural areas and the urban townships suffer. Life is static, and often essential services for well-being are unavailable or they exist are inadequate. There's a need to think differently out of the box of linear progress into what we call co-evolutionary through the concept of the community system of innovation to try to address the problems of those who live in the rural areas now rather than later after the completion of the South African Industrial Revolution. What this will happen is still unknown or it's hard to predict. For wider Africa, it's even much harder to speculate. So, from linear progress to co-evolution, what is needed is a strategy of co-evolution, where rural communities become modern without necessarily becoming urban and industrial. Now, with the digital technology, it's possible to actually do it. And all the services, education, health, energy, sanitation, clean water, transport, and housing are upgraded by supporting the community system of innovation equal to the support of innovation systems at the national, regional, sectoral technology levels. By spreading the community system of innovation for broad-based innovation for grassroots transformative livelihood changes from community ill-being into community comprehensive well-being. That's what we need to do. We may have to question elite expectation of progress from rural agriculture to manufacturing and in the industrial transformation as it took place in the West, even in the newly industrializing countries like Korea, South Korea, Taiwan, all these tiger economies. Supplant transformative linear stages of progress with the transformative strategy and policy of co-evolution communities with urban and manufacturing areas in African countries. Ubuntu, solidarity, sharing, trust, social capital for co-evolution must be cultivated and promoted. Our values are associational. We're not individualistic. Individualism was a colonial imposition on Africa. We are associational. My father used to teach me, what's love, my son? First, God. Second, people and country. Third, family. Fourth, yourself. If you say, I'm first, you will be useless, he says to me. If you love God, your people and country, and the family first, you will be, trust me, you will make it better. Your life will be much better, he says. And you will live a much more morally and emotionally intelligent life. That's what he used to. And also, don't take, give. Don't, and he used to really get very upset with me when I take from people. He used to say, you must give, not take. That's an African value. What do we now have? The wrong one, which is all imposed on us by all these, not our own extraordinary values, extraordinary philosophies. What wasn't created? Yesterday, our brother, Professor Sunday Ojo was telling us, and I mean, amazing. I mean, I was so happy yesterday. Thank you, Professor John Trimble, that for really opening that colloquium, because just the lectures they gave, the way they prepared, I'm so happy. I think we need to write to them, thanking them very much, because the knowledge we get was amazing. I also was very educated. So by promoting as a brand or logo what is framed as a community system of innovation, like you said, we need a manifesto for the appropriate technology manifesto. Please, we need to add in that manifesto the community system of innovation. I ask you humbly to really do it so that we really need to re-innovate innovation, re-economics uneconomize the current economics to re-economics it with new values and our own traditions and concepts. So prioritize for the priorities we need for the community system of innovation, rural services, health, agriculture, education, water, energy, transport. Just what you are saying to in your presentation, all these things, all the what you identified, they are here also. Identified through top research and research university work, local knowledge that can be turned into innovation. This requires adding to the triple helix and equal, even if not even more significant or relevant communities as one of the pillars of the helices, and generating opportunities for wealth creation by deploying all the actors, activists, and institutions to support the community system of innovation. Exemplary role by South Africa for the rest of Africa. South Africa needs to play an exemplary role building the community system of innovation as a means of breaking the bifurcation of its first and second economy, or formal, informal economy, township, and all these other things. South Africa's community system of innovation can be developed as a model for the rest of Africa to learn from. Now, why include the rest of Africa with South Africa? With 70% of the people in agriculture in much of Africa, the community system of innovation model will be the foundation for building the African system of social innovation, or what inclusive innovation. South Africa can deliver services if it uses the conceptual brand of the community system of innovation to focus policy, knowledge, entrepreneurship, talent, and resources downstream to the grassroots level and township levels, and include wider Africa in the process by example, and actually with direct engagement also. And it can do this. All it needs to do is innovate consciousness. It's Africanness. The reality check in Africa demands urgent action. About 70% of the African population lives in less than US $2 a day. 35 of the world's 50 least developed countries are said to be in the African continent. Population without access to electricity is said to be something like 75%. In the country where I was born, Ethiopia, we just now have what is called the Grand Renaissance Dam, and we are having big problems with our own African countries like Egypt and Sudan are struggling with us. And over 65% of the people of Ethiopia don't have electricity. How can they live like that? And our women suffer a lot because they have to do all the cooking, everything because of this. So we need electricity. You see, Sub-Saharan Africa is, they say, 75% without electricity. About 40% of the African population has no access to safe and clean drinking water. About 50% of the African population lives in poor sanitation conditions. The kind of thing you described, my brother, Professor John Trimble, about sanitation, clean water, all these things, energy, all these things you describe, we have a challenge. We need to develop a new approach where we integrate the politics, the knowledge, the economics, the sector, the technology, the nanotech, the biotech, the ICT, the space, the reach from the city, the locality to everything, the firm level, SMEs, all these things, the innovation, the product, the process, and all this new system of innovation has to be generated and organized and done with a social, inclusive, well-being anchored to both humans and nature. That's what we need to do. So South Africa is a regional pole in the wider region. Africa, important that South Africa's local includes the rest of Africa in relation to flows of science, technology, and innovation for development. Difficult to have South Africa development without the inclusion of the rest of Africa. So I prefer that South Africa focuses more on the rest of Africa than focusing on BRICS, things like that, or Europe. So we need also to change the relationship. Now, South Africa has much of its economy is foreign direct investment coming from outside, and it's exporting its minerals. We need to change that logic, even though there may be some manufacturing better than many other African countries. We need to integrate South Africa with the rest of Africa. It's extremely important we do that. The dual role of South Africa innovation system. South Africa's system of innovation has dual functions. And acknowledge, include the community system of innovation is very important and it's linked with the rest of Africa to contribute to the making of African system of innovation. I call it the social system of innovation now. Research to see whether the community system of innovation, the Africa system of innovation contribute to strengthen the South African national system of innovation, whether this relation with the community inside and rest of Africa outside hinders or promotes development. Both sides should be monitored and evaluated with the perspective of learning from both possible successes and probably also failures. So now we developed what's called the Pan-African Talent Initiative, the social enterprise with Swan University. I have been struggling to do this. We started the African Talent Hub with friends from like Professor Stephen Little. You mentioned yesterday he gave a lecture in the PhD colloquium. Very, very, very good professor, and very. I really appreciate and what he does for Africa. He genuinely thinks like what other Africans don't think about. He does think like that, and I'm happy to have met him, and we have collaborated very much. And then he has been helping me to see if we could also raise funds from the even the private companies anywhere, but to make sure that uh, we develop an African talent hub. So Swanee University could provide a space for accelerator for university students taking a path to entrepreneurship. It was very nice also listening to Professor uh, John Trimble about the Swanee University role that on the flagship and other things they are doing. Maybe we should think about this. How do we support our students? And now I'm struggling with my students also to make sure that they do take venture startups, not just write when we ask them questions, but also one of the things I give them marks is whether they're actually also doing it. They are actually setting up something, and then where they get the seed funding, where they get all these things are also have to be included in a very practical way. So I think we need to motivate our young people to be job creators now rather than job seekers. So university-wide initiatives submit business plans and for chance to be incubated. The Parties Enterprise Lab to provide mentorship, business plan bootcamp, international connections, and ongoing support to work with both commercial and social enterprise to put together best-in-class support mechanism, to connect the accelerator with corporate initiatives, seek secure corporate and philanthropic support, secure seed funding investment, and set up further collaborative spaces, bringing academia, business, and government together. The idea is also by setting up a party, we also want to have a seed funding where we can give awards when the business plan the students produce is so practical and very relevant, and then we compete. Like we have the Africa Innovation Week, where we also give prizes, and I'm one of the mentors in that. And we last year we gave to something like 50 innovations created by our Africans all over Africa. And this year also we are doing something on indigenous knowledge type, and I'm one of the members there, where we will judge from the indigenous side how our young people have created innovation. From the base of innovation, we evaluate it and we give them grants. We have funding. The funding last time we got it from the United Nations, UNDP, but this time we are raising the funds from the Africa Innovation Week, which also happened online this year, and many of our young people participated, including even Dr. Diran participated, Professor Ojo participated, many of our people, all this from also America, our brothers, African Americans, and others all participated. It's fascinating. We are now thinking about really creating innovative Africa, not social innovative Africa, not with values, with our deep values of Ubuntu and everything. Not all this no copying, because there's no need for Africa to copy. Africa could be a model for the world. It can also save the world because of what went through us, all the difficulties we have. We shouldn't complain about our difficulties. We should make it a big thing. The way South Africa did it when they had apartheid, the worst thing on them. But then when they wrote the constitution, I was so happy to see we, the people of South Africa. And then they said all the injustice that passed to us, we don't continue with it. What we do, we want to unite our people as one people. That's amazing. That's what we do. In Ethiopia, we have a different problem. We are ethnically divided. Like it's so horrible what's happening, and now we have a war, and I'm in a difficult situation now. And I have to do 2-3 interviews today, even after this, which is not very easy time we are in. So we shouldn't be in this situation, not at all. Okay. University enterprise spaces that we need support, what we need, partnerships we need, and collaborations we need. And I just want to give you what our culture matters, our community matters, our space matters, and we can then develop it. And then the internship and work placements also for our young people, find African talent promoting the program, leverage partners to provide practical assistance, match talents with corporate and enterprises, provide training, and in monitoring and impact measurements. We need skill development employment. The hub will support talent development employment through internships, work placements, and the creation of employment. Entrepreneurs incubator will be given ongoing assistance to scale up and commercialize. This support ecosystem would ensure the skills of outstanding Africans that may otherwise be underemployed are used and trained in the country. This will require ongoing assistance from the advisory board, development local entrepreneurs that we do. So we require many supports and for young entrepreneurs between the ages 20 to 35, equipped with innovative market-based solutions for social and environmental challenges, dedicated to creating long-term impact. And we need to develop this with supportive, collaborative learning and partnership support. Social venture capital funds we need to find, seeding stage, startup stage social ventures we could find, pipeline building and connecting to external investors, investment ready scale up social ventures and scale up things we need to do. All these things we need to develop. So I want to now end. In South Africa, we need the community innovation system is still waiting to be made. It's a movement in South Africa and wider Africa. Co-evolution of rural, urban, agriculture, industrial with South Africa and the rest of Africa. Modernize rural areas and townships using now our current indigenous digital technology, Internet of Things, blockchain, and many things now we have. And triple helices, we are community and project quadruple helix, government, university, industry, and the community, and plan policy resource research to support this community system innovation, build the Africanness of the South African communities in itself a big social innovation, as important as doing away with apartheid perhaps. And the low-hanging fruits will fall and will be delicious, and the rest is expected worse, but hope for the best. So conclusion and recommendation to support this: apply life, agriculture and health research, develop agriculture technology, irrigation infrastructure, sustain and build resources, water and minerals, generate electricity and renewable energies, apply systematic information, bio, nano, technology application for improved food and nutrition as an energy, excavate and harness the vast community knowledge, turn them into innovations. Amesagnalo, asante sana. Thank you. Are you
Thank
listening
you
to me?
very much, Prof. Lucci. That was fantastic. Need you to end your screen share.
Okay.
To the audience, we basically had three aspects that we're looking at. I gave this overview and the particular example with our flagship, and Prof. Mucci, with his immense experience in innovation studies, was to look at that from the innovation studies direction, which he did an excellent job. The third presenter was to be Mr. Fulawa, who had unfortunately got pulled away with some other assignments with the university, but I'm going to just in a few minutes capture what he was going to talk about. He is a doctoral student who is looking particularly at the circular economy as an alternative to the linear economy supply chain options they were under. And this is a important area of research that really embraces the fact that we are in a finite environment on this planet. We can't just keep developing things and then dumping them into landfills. So he's particularly looking at the manufacturing environment with circular economy so that products will actually it's not just an issue of recycling parts of things, but really looking at how to have a new paradigm when it comes to design, so that actually your design and your manufacturing process are more inclusive in terms of the circular economy, in terms of being able to account for all of the parts for the whole life of those parts. So what I want to do now is to uh, invite the participants to ask questions or to actually engage in their particular examples that they may have with regards um, to socially relevant research. So you have, as attendees, the ability to ask questions in the Q&A box. And if you want to, I can advance you to a panelist status where you can actually have a more detailed discussion about what you're engaged in. So I'm looking for inputs from our audience on that. I see Marcel is there. I can advance you so that you can. Okay. Actually, Giovanni, you are the host. You would have to advance people to panelists or remove their mute so they can do something.
Okay. Maybe then if can maybe get someone who want to speak to either raise their hand or type in the chat box, and I'll be able to allow them to speak. I see Dr. Danian.
Also, I see Marcel has his hand up too.
Okay, let me that's Marcel. Okay, I'll make him okay, now I can speak. Mr. Marcel, please go ahead with your question. Marcel Castro.
Good morning and
Good
good
morning.
afternoon.
Hi.
Yes, great to hear you and the presenters. I'm here. It's 6 in the morning and I'm in the home, so excuse my background family noise. And I I have one question that is related to the concept of developing a nation and developed country, because that's something that we have discussed in previous ICAT. And and I there is a term coming from the American heritage, the Native American, of sumac causai in the Quechua, that means a good life. And I am wondering if similar concepts can be used in the African continent, because sumac causai is used in the constitution of Bolivia and also Ecuador to substitute development. So instead of chasing development, like the Europeans and the so-called West or North, um, innovation for development, if it can be done with a different concept. In Tanzania, for example, with Maisha Bora, which means also a good life. So it's already in the presenter Mamo Muche, that when he mentioned that the elite expectation of progress, like that's not something that we want. So it's already there, but I'm wondering if an African exploration of terms that means quality of life could be included. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Marcel. Mamu, would you want to address that some? I think it did touch on some of what you were doing, and I know in various discussion, Ubuntu has been raised as a similar terminology, but not quite the same as what's being raised here as a good life.
Yes, I think it's a very good question, Marcel. Thank you. What our can I just say to you? There are two things that happen to us in Africa. One is our knowledge heritage, our spiritual heritage, even our struggle successes. We have not been acknowledged by ourselves too, not by outsiders, but ourselves. Which means that key values like this, like the smart kasi, yeah, the Masha Bora, all these values that are rich and very, very powerful, and also what they do is they change human relationships. Human relationship is not just selfish, individualistic, and the pursuit of self-interest. again, and to hurt others to make interest, to make money. Those are not the values. Our values are not like that. Those values, we got them from outside, and then we took them. The other important thing is that the outsiders, the colonial, we only think about the colonialists for taking our resources. That's not, and our land and all these things. And the worst thing is the mind. Our mind inferiorizing. In other words, the SIM card, the hard disk, yeah, the software of our mind, it still is inferiorizes ourselves. We still respect not ourselves. I mean, I'm not saying that we should be racist ourselves, no, but at least we should recognize our own dignity, our own self-worth, our own, identity as a value. We still copy. I mean, if you see all our women, they copy their hair and everything. I say to my students, don't do that. Just be yourself. You're beautiful. Don't worry, and things like that. We have issues, serious issues. Our humanity has to change. The innovation we need to make is actually not just innovation in terms of how to do things, but to how to change our identity, our values, ourselves, and remove this inferiorizing and superiorizing identity that has come. Those guys that came to colonize us made us like this. I mean, here in South Africa, a lot of our own people, and what did they say? There was a book was written by the racists. I read it in 2003. I was nearly. I sincerely, I'm telling you, I was so shocked. I couldn't sleep almost for 2 days after I read it. He cannot teach, he says, Africans mathematics and science. No. They only teach them how to do wash and garden and this kind of thing. They need to work like that, and so that they don't steal, you put a lot of religion to them, the Bible. This is the only way you could do it. That's what he said. That's what they have done to us. So all I'm saying to you is, if we have to sincerely do all we can to bring back, as my brother Professor Trimble said, the curriculum change, this decolonizing thing, not the education from kindergarten to everything. We Africans should value ourselves and also value the extraordinary ideas that have come that will save not just us. Ubuntu will save the world. If I'm you and you are me, why would I want to kill you? If I kill you, I'm killing myself. Better I hurt myself than hurting you. That kind of value we have, which is extraordinary. And that value, we should bring it back. And then we should change the whole legal system, the governance system. Everything has to be really nicely done. Now we have all this corruption, leadership crisis, curse, many things we have. That has to change. And the economy, the social, the environment, all these things in the world we are now, with all these challenges we have, we need Africa. Africa will save the world. The values our ancestors created is so rich. And what you just mentioned also, they may be suffering in Brazil, but look what our people, their values are. The CD people in India, the same thing. Everywhere where Africans are, they are amazing. I'm sincerely telling you. So I'm not saying this for anything, but it's very important that we recognize. Sorry for taking a bit long.
Thank you, Prof. Mucci. I actually wanted to raise something to Marcel. I know he's done a bit of work over the years with regards to alternative energy, and he's there in Puerto Rico where he had to address the aftermath of the catastrophe there in terms of the power outages that resulted. Could you speak to some of your experience in terms of I mean, this whole emphasis we're placing on socially relevant research? I think you done quite a bit of work on that. Could you speak to some of that, particularly with regards to the field of energy?
Yes, and thank you for asking. So in Puerto Rico, particularly in energy, we are in a critical point because we're going through a transition. Now we have a big opportunity with the reconstruction funds that are supposed to come, hopefully in the next 4 years. But those reconstruction funds are gonna reshape the energy landscape, and not necessarily for the better, even though we could. So it's a great potential to really do things better, but potential is not enough. I feel like often in Puerto Rico and in many countries in the African continent, we have a lot of potential that we fail to translate into a good quality of life for people. And so this might become another failed example. But I hope not. That's a struggle that we're doing, and we have the potential to include decentralization of energy, not only because I support decentralization of power, both electrical and political, but because that's what makes more sense in terms of being resilient to hurricanes, which 2 years ago I presented about the power outage that lasted almost a year. And then one last thing that I wanted to share is a concept that I just learned from a colleague. He wrote me an email at 2 in the morning about a talk that we're planning to have in this fight for Puerto Rican energy sovereignty. And he mentioned about clean energy, but clean energy not only that doesn't emit emissions of CO2, but energy that is clean from corruption, energy that is clean from colonization and imperialism. So I thought it was brilliant. I never heard that term. So that's something to add to the vocabulary of the concept. When we talk about clean energy, it's not only with using solar panels, but also that is clean from corruption and the imperialism that we are so used to it. So that might be a new terms in Puerto Rico, and hopefully that will resonate in other countries as well in terms of redefining clean energy. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcel. I think that this energy area is so critical. As I mentioned, that's one of the pillars with our flagship project. But I think what you hit on in terms of this notion of clean energy is so important because it's not just a matter of alternative energy in terms of clean from fossil fuels, but it is an issue with regards to when we're talking seriously about empowering communities, that it has to be free from corruption and from the tentacles of imperialism and capitalism. And unfortunately, a lot of what's being projected now in terms of clean energy is very much latched to this capitalist model, whether it's the what you hear coming out of BP, British Petroleum, claiming that they're going to have a clean energy agenda, which is totally absurd since they are so linked into fossil fuel, or whether it's unfortunately the IPPs, independent power producers here in South Africa, which do not have the agenda of really empowering communities, and that these contradictions exist. The IPP here is supposedly have the agenda of solar and wind, but it is not community based. It is more of a connection between the former apartheid uh, power holders, and I mean political power holders now, and a small uh, sort of cabal of those who were opportunists in terms of misusing the broad-based Black empowerment agenda in terms of claiming to have some level of involvement and engagement in that. So I think in all cases, when we look at any of these agenda items that we're talking about in terms of areas that are more socially relevant, that we have to look at it within the context of what Marcel is raising in terms of being clean from corruption and imperialism. We see the same thing with the focus of agriculture uh, that Prof. Mucci had raised in terms of this being so important in terms of in so many countries with the large numbers of people who are living in rural areas and have their livelihood from the agricultural sector, that the agenda has to be addressed when we talk about socially relevant research or whether we talk about decolonization in terms of a global process. We have to be able to empower these communities. But unfortunately, a lot of the funds going now in terms of agriculture and rural areas are not looking at the masses and not looking at empowering communities. We see, for instance, that across Africa, there have been large land purchases by foreign countries and foreign multinationals with an eye to this being the next arena in terms of agricultural development, because it's recognized that Africa has the largest uh, land base of undeveloped, potentially agricultural developable land. And it's because so much of those engaged in the agricultural field are doing this at a subsistence level. So it's recognized that there's massive amount of underdevelopment in this area, and this is also where water becomes key in terms of water with regards to irrigation. Prof. Mucci mentioned the dam project there in Ethiopia. Part of that is to supply water for drinking water, but all of that is to supply power. And also, anytime you have a dam project, it also has the potential to supply water for irrigation. So these are things that we have to look at from a perspective of empowering communities. We do have about 10 or 15 minutes left. I'm looking to see if we have any other hands up.
Prof,
In
there's a
terms
question on the chat box from Dr. Danian Ilesamni. I'll read it through for us. The question says, within the context of R&D, how can the implementation of R&D findings be enhanced within the African settings? That is from Dr. Danian. Thanks.
how can say that again?
It says, within the context of R&D, how can the implementation of R&D findings be enhanced within the African settings?
Okay. Do you want to address that some, Prof. Mucci? And you certainly
Yes.
have had more R&D funding here in South Africa than many. Go ahead.
I want you to continue for 100 work. Age doesn't, physical age is not equal to mental age. Mentally, you're still young. Physically, maybe older. But anyway, that's my job. Now, the question is relevant. The important thing is R&D is like this. Many, a lot of our in our industrial sector, in our firms, a lot of them that our own people do is small and medium-sized enterprises, micro enterprises, and they are not even social enterprises. The Germans have amazing. They have so many social enterprises, but we do not have many social enterprises. Like we don't what we just say social relevant research now. We need social enterprises, social innovation, all these things we need to do, even social technology. So what we have is we lack on these enterprises. Now, if you want to develop these enterprises, they need to have R&D, but R&D costs. It's expensive. And the interesting thing is when you do R&D, what it means is when you create innovations through R&D, it may take time, and sometimes even you put the research, you may not even produce the kind of thing you want through the R&D. So because of these challenges that R&D has, the cost element, many firms when they start, they their success rate is lower than their failure rate is higher. Something like that happens often. And for that, if you want R&D to be supported, you need also the triple helix, the quadruple helix I told you about to be formed, meaning government also has to have a fund where certain firms that qualify can access certain funds. If that funds comes not from them at their cost, but if it comes like from a source like that with support, with collaboration, then the success rate, even if they fail, they may not fail, the firm may not collapse, but what may happen is that the success from R&D may not have happened. So those are the kind of things that we think about. But if we're thinking about R&D support, we need genuinely to create serious serious ways by which this R&D is delivered also, not just by all the firms, but by themselves, where they may contribute, but there must be a fund source where they can be supported. If something like that doesn't happen in Africa, then it's very, very difficult to get all the transformation process that we are looking for, where we get not just making rural in the rural areas all kinds of farming taking place, and then the way it's being farmed is also not changing because technology application may be low, because we're not applying R&D and so on. So we need to, as you rightly put it, we need to contextualize it in the African setting and find a solution with our quadruple helices that I mentioned, where we again open a R&D source fund, where for innovative activities, who qualify must also apply for it with a proof of their very solid application, which can be evaluated, monitored, and selected. Something like that should happen. So to promote the development pattern, that's what I suggest.
Thank you. Thank you. I see a hand up, Malaz Ahmed. Can you unmute him?
Who's that, Prof?
Malaz Ahmed, under the
Okay.
participants, has his hand up.
All right, I'll unmute him now. Okay.
Hello,
Also,
everyone.
yes, you can go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello, I am Malaz from Sudan, Khartoum, and I'm a PhD student at the University of Khartoum. First of all, I'm really thankful for the opportunity. Your insights opened my mind for different aspects, another aspect in about colonialism and so on. So I'm focusing on urban policies and the evolution of urban policies in Sudan, and I recognized that the colonialism is not just in agriculture, as you said in your presentation, or in this specific field of study, but it's also we also in Sudan inherited the colonialism urban administrative policy, which affect the urban fabric in general in Khartoum and the major cities. So I was wondering how we can be innovative in relation to the urban issues and urban policies, and how we can change our mentality or decolonize our mentality when we're thinking about the urban issue to have a more livable community. Thank you.
Thank you, Malaz. That's an excellent question, and I'm excited about the work you're doing with regards to urban policy. Actually, I'm presenting a paper looking at smart African cities
Yes.
because I'm very interested in the urbanization process. Many people, while still the majority of Africans are in rural areas, and more people are employed in agriculture than in certainly in the north, and certainly compared to the cities. The urbanization process in Africa is growing faster than anywhere in the world. Uh,
Yes.
and and at the same time, we understand that there is a expansive youth population, so that our youth bulge in Africa is the largest in the world. So what this means is that as urbanization increases and the youth bulge is there, that the working age population is growing exponentially, while at the same time with the fourth industrial revolution, there's a squeeze in terms of job opportunities. So what this means in terms of how we have to address urban policies is so important. And this is part of why within our arena of INET, we're looking so seriously at the need for a appropriate technology manifesto. And while I'm particularly concerned with how we link in issues like the fourth industrial revolution and circular economy, which in some arenas in the north and in the Western countries become buzzwords
Yes.
in terms of how to increase capitalist power. How do we, in fact, use this in our engagement in decolonization? Is key, and that's some of what I tried to address within the context of the curriculum changes. But more broadly, what that means is that we have to use appropriate technology to empower communities. Now, what the
Mhm.
urban setting presents to us is a more focused community that's in more contact and more immediate contact, and that has the ability to engage and raise some of these issues. And I think that's where those of us who see the importance of the agenda of urban policy in general, technology policy in specific, and have some idea as to how the fourth industrial revolution potentially can impact in a positive and a negative fashion, that we have to be able to engage in the anti-colonial struggle in terms of our opposition to imperialism in an active fashion, to bring into the broader movement uh, our understanding of what is happening with regards to this technology dynamic. So hopefully you will engage more with us
Oh,
in
thank you.
terms. Yes,
It's my honor. Thank you.
yes. Are there other hands up, or or other people who want to respond to the questions? I did want to make some response to the R&D support issue. I, in my presentation, talked more specifically and gave the example of how R&D, particularly in the U.S. and specific, but the West in general, has spent so much money with regards to the military. The second, when the other two major expenditures come within the arena of pharmaceuticals, under the guise of, quite often under the guise of medical benefits, but it really is what's benefiting pharmaceutical industry. And then the other is in the space exploration industry, uh, which is really just an extension of militarism in many fashions, because it's now, instead of conquering new territories on the planet Earth, it's about, we're going to conquer space, either in the sense of physically, we want to conquer and put our flag or their flag on the moon or Mars, or we feel that we are going to conquer space in the sense of the understanding of how extensive it is, or either within the physical sense of where the university began in time and space, or in the sense of how its composition is. And now, while those may be useful concepts in terms of the notion of pure science, in the arena of what is needed to, as Marcel mentioned, provide the masses with a good life, or in the arena of some of what I've mentioned in terms of providing basic needs, being able to understand some of these ideas or concepts of what lies beyond our galaxy certainly play, as I would say, second fiddle to the basic needs of the people, but not in the sense of the capitalist agenda in terms of how they have allocated R&D support in terms of funding. I've had the opportunity to work in Zimbabwe and Rwanda in addition to South Africa. And I think, unfortunately, the monies that the universities and the governments are able to spend in Africa just are microscopic compared to what you see in Western countries. So as a result, you even find that in many university settings, like in Zimbabwe, that you have researchers running after funds that are basically R&D monies coming out of the capitalist fold, so that they may actually want to get money from USAID or get money from World Bank or even fundings agencies that are supported by those. And that's an unfortunate reality because of the limited amount of R&D monies that are coming from uh, the governments in these countries, and it's even a smaller amount coming if you look at those coming from industry. So, for instance, when I was in the U.S., you had universities getting money from Google and IBM because these are major multinational entities that want to use the universities as a space where they can advance their R&D agenda and at the same time use these universities as a source of recruitment uh, for human capital in terms of their future agenda. We don't have that in Africa. If you look at Zimbabwe, or you look at Sudan, or you look at Rwanda, we don't have these kind of entities that will serve to provide the R&D funds that you have. We have here in South Africa some of this to a limited extent. What we have been able to establish, for instance, with the Gibela Tshwane University of Technology partnership is an example of that, where what has happened is the government has mandated that so much monies to the development of the rail industry and directly in terms of producing so many rail commuter trains, but then in the process, by earmarking the creation of the Gibela uh, entity, which is partially owned by a French company, but is mandated to be primarily owned by South Africa and South Africans, and to have the supply chain in terms of the parts that are supplied to actually produce the rail cars have that placed in South Africa versus importing and just serving as a assembly point. That as part of that, they reached out in terms of an R&D window to TUT so that we're actually engaged in research that looks at not only how to be more effective with skills development, but even research looking at, for instance, the ramp up process of how do you start from scratch to actually moving to developing a massive facility that will engage in manufacturing uh, uh, commuter rail cars. So this is part of, as I'm using this as an example, but it's just a small window compared to what exists in countries that have a much more developed industrial sector that is at a cutting edge with regards to uh, the technologies and therefore is willing to put more money into R&D. So this is where we're faced with, and many suggest that the solution is to is for governments to have to spend more money on this. But the problem there is if you say, okay, government spend more money on R&D, what about, some basic needs that communities have in terms of delivering basic water, energy? So it's a prospect that I think sort of puts the onus on us as researchers to figure out how we can all make our research more socially relevant, but at the same time, organize ourselves so that both within the framework of our university settings, of our research settings, that we can play more of an ongoing role, but also and as Malaj was mentioning, in terms of looking at the, for instance, in the urban setting, how to engage in with those in a broader setting that are not part of it. We have only a couple minutes left. I want to open if there are any last comments that people have. I don't see any hands up.
There's a question here from Delani Favors Tobela. Is asking how can we improve the colonization system that was introduced to us as Africans through social innovation system. That's from Delani Favors. So it's
How
asking
can we
to how can we
how can we
improve the colonization system that was introduced to us as Africans through social innovation system.
Okay, since he's talking about social innovation, why don't I, Mahmoud, do you want to address that in terms of innovation studies?
Yes. No, I think that's a very interesting question. Let's suppose that colonialism was imposed on us. Now we need to innovate out of it. But how do we do the innovation? In other words, how do we decolonize even the technology, the science, innovation, the education, the health, every system that we have, our side is not included. All right, there's no fusion from our side. It's what has been done was what from our side things were taken. I'll just give you a concrete example. The in the British Library in King's Cross in London, I read from a German. It's written in 9 pages, and that German says every pharmaceutical knowledge that we Germans got is from the Ethiopian ancient manuscripts that we found it, he said. And then, I mean, yesterday, if you were in the meeting with our PhD colloquium, what wasn't created on every sphere of knowledge in Africa? But that side has not been acknowledged, included. So the innovation we need to do is we need to innovate even our what was excluded, all right, to be revived. And so a revival innovation is needed. And then you are right, this social innovation is also necessary in terms of also including all the philosophies and values, and in terms of human relationships too, that the trust, everything that we have lost, that has also to come. In other words, we need to also do innovations, not just as individuals, but with team, as groups. We as a, we can make it like that. We can develop like that. Like now, I say to my students, we do a course on creativity, innovation, so entrepreneurship for venture creation. I say I want you to form into groups to set up a new venture, but I don't want you to make it an individual one. But I want you to do. This is very much. It's almost I'm doing practically a social one. In other words, I want them to learn to be friends too. That is the most important output too. Not just as individuals they create, but as a team they do. Something like that is what we need to develop. Now we need to decolonize completely. We need to build teamworks, collaboration. Even where to compete, we need to first collaborate, not just make it individual competition. Many things like that have to happen. We also need to really relearn what was created in Africa, and not just others took it and then denied that it was created from us. we need to revalue that, put it back on the agenda, put it in every sphere, and then move onwards and forwards. I think we can do it. We can make a big change. We need social innovation to decolonize ourselves completely, and also move on the right direction to create a well-being anchored. We don't want our people to be beggars, to be thirsty, to be hungry. We want all our people must be in a situation where they all can engage in life in a very systematic way. You know, Africa is a very rich continent. We are richer than any continent in this planet in terms of resources. The DRC Congo has resources estimated to 24 trillion. Coltan, everything, what don't we have? Even South Africa has about 16 minerals, and that is estimated to something like, I don't know how to explain to you, over 3 trillion they have. No, South Africa is 54 million people. Nobody should be a beggar. We should find a way. I mean, in Scandinavia, not a very rich country, in Norway, they have now electric cars. I mean, they're now getting out of diesel and everything. And they also created the Sovereign Wealth Fund. They said, what should we do when they got the oil? Should we give it to the people? We should give it to the state? Should we give it to, the companies? No companies, no state, to the people. Now the people of Norway, they are all rich. And when I went to Norway, when we worked with them on Africa Innovation Week, first we did it in Norway, and they were very supportive, genuinely. I mean, I was amazed. And when I went to restaurants, they said, no, mama, we can't pay. We're rich, we pay. That's what they said to me. And so I like Africa to be in this situation, to come out of all this nonsense that we're in. And we need to know how to manage our resources. That's innovate. We need innovation there. How to own it, our own wealth. How to also collaborate and also share and care. All these values, we need to have moral intelligence, emotional intelligence, intellectual intelligence. We need to combine them together with the system we create. We call it a social innovation system, a community innovation system we need to create. That's what we need to do.
Thank
I
you.
hope this is okay. Thank you.
Yes, we drawing to a conclusion here, or end for this session. Let me just check, Giovanni, are there any other questions on the board?
No, Prof, there's no more other question on the chat box.
Okay, so I mean, we covered quite a bit of ground here, I think. I mean, we've heard the Prof. Mahmoud Muchi speak to the focus of agriculture. We've heard Professor Marcel Castro speak to the importance of decentralizing energy and how that's more than just energy, but power, and this power is both political and material. We've looked at the whole idea of clean energy being more than just using renewables, but also a matter of being free from corruption and imperialism. We've looked at urban policy, and how, while we've inherited a colonial administration, that how with the massive urbanization within Africa, we need to look at how to reshape the policies and to formulate smart cities. We've looked at the question of the R&D support. And then in the last, we looked at this whole inheritance of colonial structures and how we must respond most effectively to those. I'd like us to, I'm going to report on some of these in our closing session Friday. I'd like to be sure to invite everyone to our session tomorrow that's looking more at just how to move forward with this arena policy with regards to appropriate technology manifesto. And I'd like to also encourage everyone, you should have received a invitation to actually join INAT in terms of membership, because we believe that this is an ongoing effort, and what we're engaged in is not just simply a conference of a few days, but the broader agenda of building a appropriate technology movement that will be on an ongoing basis about empowering our community and our peoples. So with that, I want to thank everyone that's attended, encourage you to participate fully in this week's activities, and please enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can you send us your PowerPoint?
Yes,
Please.
we'll have it posted.
Thank you. Send it to me by email.
Thank you and muchas gracias.